I always figured my neighborhood was one of those places that time itself had overlooked, a sleepy suburb where life ticked along like a well-oiled clock, predictable and unassuming. Elmwood Drive in Franklin Park, New Jersey, was the epitome of mundane Americana, the kind of street you'd see in a real estate brochure touting family-friendly vibes and low crime rates. Houses stood in neat, uniform rows like soldiers on parade, each clad in identical beige vinyl siding with crisp white trim that gleamed under the summer sun. Front yards were postage stamp sized, but every one was meticulously manicured, with emerald lawns clipped to perfection every Saturday morning, as if by some unspoken communal decree. Kids pedaled bikes around the cul-de-sac in endless, lazy loops, their laughter echoing faintly before dissolving into the distant hum of highway traffic. Adults exchanged waves from their driveways, quick, obligatory gestures that acknowledged existence without inviting any real conversation. Trash cans rolled out precisely on Tuesdays, blue recycling bins on Thursdays, and the mailman made his rounds at exactly 2:15 p.m. every day. No scandals erupted, no fireworks lit up the night sky. Just quiet, sealed routines, each family cocooned in their own little bubble of normalcy. My name is Alex Thompson, and I've been calling this slice of suburbia home for 8 solid years. At 35, I was a freelance graphic designer, the kind who hunkered down in a home office most days, staring at dual monitors while crafting logos, websites, and marketing materials for clients I'd never meet face to face. My house was as unremarkable as the rest. A modest 2-story colonial with a small front yard dotted by a single maple tree that turned fiery red in the fall, and a backyard enclosed by aging wooden fence panels that creaked ominously in the wind. No fancy amenities to boast about, no in-ground pool, no elaborate stone patio with fire pits, no manicured flower beds bursting with color. Just a simple concrete slab out back with a rusty Weber grill that had seen better days, a weathered shed for storing tools and seasonal junk, and my basic push mower leaning against the wall like a faithful old dog. It was my sanctuary, a deliberate escape from the chaos of my previous life in the city. That city life had been a whirlwind, and not in a good way. Before Elmwood Drive, I'd lived in a cramped apartment in downtown Newark, surrounded by the constant symphony of honking horns, shouting vendors, and neighbors who treated walls like suggestions rather than barriers. My ex, Sarah, had been the epicenter of that storm. She was a free spirit, her words, not mine. With a penchant for dragging me to impromptu parties, starting arguments over the most trivial things, like how I folded the laundry or which streaming service to subscribe to, and borrowing items from friends without ever intending to return them. Our breakup had been explosive, accusations flying, doors slamming, and her storming out with half my wardrobe, a stack of my favorite books, and every ounce of my remaining patience. I sold the apartment, pocketed the meager profit, and fled to Franklin Park for a fresh start. Elmwood Drive promised stability, quiet, and anonymity. Or so I thought. Little did I know, drama has a way of seeping through even the most airtight seals. The illusion began to crack over something as trivial and everyday as a gas can. It started innocently enough, blending seamlessly into the rhythm of my weekly chores. I mowed my lawn every Saturday, rain or shine, unless a client deadline buried me under a mountain of revisions. My mower was a no-frills model, the kind you propelled by sheer human effort, with a gas tank that held maybe a quart at best, barely enough to cover my small patch of grass without a refill midway. To keep things convenient, I stored a standard red 5-gallon plastic can right on the patio, tucked neatly beside the grill. It was one of those generic jobs from the local Home Depot, with a yellow spout that sometimes dripped if you weren't careful, and a vent cap that stuck occasionally from the buildup of fumes. I'd drive down to the Sunoco station on Route 27 every couple of weeks, grumbling under my breath about the ever-rising price of unleaded, $3.50 a gallon back then, which felt like highway robbery, and fill it to the brim. No lock on the can, no special hiding spot. Why would I need one? This was Elmwood Drive, where the biggest threat was a stray cat knocking over a flower pot. But after a few weeks of this routine, a subtle unease crept in, like a whisper you can't quite pinpoint amid the background noise. The gas can started feeling lighter than it should. Not completely empty, mind you, but noticeably depleted in a way that nagged at the edges of my awareness. I'd pick it up, give it a shake, and hear the diminished slosh echoing inside. I'd mutter to myself, setting it down with a frown. At first, I blamed my own forgetfulness. Must have used more last time than I remembered. Or perhaps it was evaporation. The summers in Franklin Park were brutal, with humidity levels that turned the air into a thick soup, making everything feel sticky and prone to volatility. Your brain does incredible gymnastics to avoid confronting the ugly possibilities. Theft. In this neighborhood? It sounded paranoid, almost laughable. We were all good, law-abiding folks here, or at least, that's the narrative I clung to as I shelled out another $20 at the pump, watching the digital display tick upward. Yet the discrepancies kept mounting, stubborn and undeniable. Let's break it down with some simple math, the kind I did mentally while sipping coffee on the patio one morning. My lawn was modest, clocking in at about 5,000 square feet, a quick 45-minute mow that consumed roughly half a quart of gas. Even if I skipped a week and let the grass grow a bit shaggy, requiring a double session the next time, 2 full mows shouldn't have drained a 5-gallon can in under a month. But there I was, refilling it bi-weekly without fail. I started keeping more deliberate mental tallies, filled it to the absolute top on Monday evening after work. Mowed on Wednesday, small yard, light growth. Should have at least 4 gallons remaining. A few days later, I'd check again. Barely 2 gallons sloshing around. It was as if the gas was vanishing into thin air, evaporating faster than dew on a hot sidewalk. Paranoia took root, blooming into full-fledged suspicion. I began auditing my own habits with the scrutiny of a forensic accountant. No spills during refills, I was meticulous with the spout, wiping up any drips immediately. No detectable leaks from the can itself. I inspected it top to bottom, even sniffing around for that telltale gasoline odor on the concrete. I hadn't lent it out to anyone, hell, I barely interacted with my neighbors beyond those perfunctory waves. The backyard fence gate latched shut with a satisfying click, but it wasn't locked, never had been. Still, the idea of someone just waltzing in felt absurd, like accusing the UPS driver of rifling through your sock drawer. One restless night, lying in bed staring at the ceiling fan's lazy rotations, I couldn't shake the feeling. I got up, padded to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water, gazing out the window at the dark shapes of the neighborhood. That's when I started really eyeing my neighbors, mentally cataloging them like suspects in a low-stakes whodunit. There was Mrs. Evelyn Hargrove directly across the street, a sweet widow in her early 70s who spent her days tending to her rose bushes and baking apple pies for the occasional block holiday gathering. She waved every time she saw me, sometimes with a plate of cookies in hand. Unlikely culprit, she could barely lift her watering can, let alone lug a gas jug. Next door were the Patels, Raj and Priya, a young couple in their late 20s with a newborn baby who cried at all hours. They were both software engineers, always looking harried and sleep-deprived, juggling diaper bags and laptops. Too busy changing onesies to plot petty thefts. The house on the other side belonged to the Wilsons, an older retired couple who spent most of their time in Florida. Their place was dark half the year. Then my gaze drifted 2 houses down, to Jerry Caldwell's ramshackle domain. Jerry was the neighborhood's outlier, the jagged piece that didn't quite fit into the puzzle of suburban serenity. He was in his mid-40s, maybe pushing 50 if the gray streaks in his unkempt hair were any indication, with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and clothes that always looked grease-stained, as if he'd just crawled out from under a car engine, even on days when he clearly hadn't touched a wrench. He was loud, the kind of guy whose voice carried across the street during his frequent driveway rants about politics or sports, opinionated in a way that bordered on abrasive. His house was a perpetual eyesore, shutters half-painted in a faded blue, a driveway cluttered with jack stands, scattered tools, and random auto parts that looked like they'd been salvaged from a junkyard. His lawn was mowed in erratic patches, yellowing in spots where he'd apparently given up midway through the job. And his mower? It was an ancient, rattling beast that sounded like it was gargling nails and broken glass every time he fired it up, sending plumes of blue smoke into the air. He drove an old Ford F-150 pickup that rumbled like thunder down the street, and I'd seen him blasting classic rock from his open garage at odd hours, drawing annoyed glances from passers-by. Our interactions were minimal. I'd wave if our paths crossed, he'd grunt back, sometimes with a half-smirk that made my skin crawl. My gut twisted, pointing an accusatory finger straight at him. It was irrational at first, no hard evidence, just a visceral vibe. But vibes have a way of coalescing into certainty when fed by doubt. Jerry struck me as the type who cut corners, who saw rules as suggestions for other people. Why not siphon a little gas from the neighbor? Easy pickings. This was back in 2012, well before every front porch sprouted a Ring doorbell camera and your phone buzzed with motion alerts for every leaf that stirred. If you wanted surveillance, you had to get creative, roll up your sleeves, and DIY it. I rummaged through my hall closet, digging past old winter coats and boxes of forgotten gadgets until I unearthed my ancient Dell laptop from college days, a clunky beast with a whirring fan that sounded like a small aircraft taking off. Paired it with a dusty webcam I'd bought years ago for video calls, the kind with a clip-on stand and grainy 720p resolution that made everything look slightly pixelated. I downloaded some free motion detection software from a sketchy but functional website, spending an hour fiddling with the installation to get it running without crashing the system. Setting it up turned into a comedy of errors that tested my patience. I positioned the laptop on a rickety stool by the back window, angling the webcam so it captured the patio in full, the grill on the left, the red gas can dead center, its bright plastic impossible to miss against the gray concrete. I tested it a dozen times, waving my arms like a madman in front of the lens to trigger the alerts, adjusting the sensitivity to filter out false positives from wind-blown leaves or curious birds. Added a timestamp overlay for that extra layer of irrefutable proof, and set it to email me short video clips whenever motion was detected. It wasn't elegant, far from it, but it would work. The whole setup looked like a Rube Goldberg machine, wires snaking across the floor, but I felt a surge of empowerment as I hit activate. I baited the trap with subtlety, leaving the can half full and prominently visible, as if nothing was amiss. Then I went about my days, heart pounding a little faster every time I stepped out the door for errands or work calls. The wait wasn't long, agonizingly short, in fact. It was a bright Saturday afternoon, the kind where the sun beat down relentlessly, turning the air shimmering with heat. I grabbed my keys, muttered to the empty house out of habit, heading out for some groceries, back in an hour, and drove off toward the shopping center on Route 1. Not even 5 minutes had passed when my phone buzzed in the cup holder, motion alert. I pulled into a Starbucks parking lot, heart racing like I'd just run a sprint, and opened the email attachment with trembling fingers. The footage was clear enough, despite the webcam's limitations, grainy but unmistakable. There was Jerry, sauntering through my backyard gate like he owned the damn place, no hesitation, no furtive glances over his shoulder. Bold as brass, he strode right up to the patio, picked up the gas can with practiced ease, unscrewed the cap, and poured a steady stream into a small blue plastic jug he carried under his arm. A gallon at least, maybe more. Then he capped it tightly, set the can back down exactly where he'd found it, same spot, same angle, as if to erase any trace of disturbance, and strolled back out through the gate, disappearing from frame. The entire act took less than a minute, executed with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done it 100 times before. I replayed the clip 3 times, pausing to zoom in on his face, studying the smug nonchalance. The casualness of it all ignited something deep inside me, not a hot, explosive rage that would burn out quick, but a cold, simmering anger that sharpened my focus like a whetstone on a blade. This wasn't a desperate, one-off grab, it was routine, entitlement personified. My backyard, my property, reduced to a free refill station in his mind. How long had this been going on? Months? Years? The thought made my stomach churn. Options flooded my mind as I sat there in the car, the air conditioning blasting cold air against my heated skin. I could confront him directly, march over with the video on my phone, shove it in his face, and demand answers. What the hell, Jerry? Stealing from neighbors now? But I could already picture his response. Denial, gaslighting, maybe even a laugh to brush it off as a misunderstanding. Or worse, escalation into some neighborhood feud. Calling the cops was another route, petty theft, sure, but theft nonetheless. The local Franklin Park police station was just a few miles away. I could file a report, show the footage, and let them handle it. But something about Jerry's demeanor in the video, so practiced, so unconcerned, told me this wasn't his first rodeo. Guys like him didn't stop because they got embarrassed or slapped on the wrist. They stopped only when the game became too inconvenient, too costly to play. So I decided to make it very inconvenient indeed. Something petty, proportional, and poetic. Gas for gas, in a twisted sort of way. That night, I confided in my buddy Mike over a couple of beers at the local pub, the Franklin Tap. Mike was an old college friend who'd stuck around the area, working as an IT guy for a nearby firm. He was the pragmatic type, always quick with advice or a laugh. "Dude, that's wild," he said, eyes widening as I showed him the clip on my phone. "Jerry? That grease monkey? Figures. What are you gonna do, punch him?" I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Nah, something better. Subtler. I'm thinking, contamination." Mike raised an eyebrow. "Like what? Sugar in the tank?" "That's classic, but it could backfire if he traces it. I'd read about that online, sugar clogs fuel lines, ruins engines." But it was too obvious, too traceable if he got suspicious. "No, something organic. Undetectable at first. Urine." Mike nearly spit out his beer. "Piss? In the gas can? That's savage, Alex. Genius, but savage. The ammonia will eat away at the seals, clog the filters over time. And gas smells so strong, he won't notice until it's too late." We brainstormed details, Mike suggesting adding food coloring for visibility, but I nixed it. Stealth was key. By the end of the night, the plan was solid. For the next week, I left the gas can exactly where it was, maintaining the illusion of normalcy. Same spot on the patio, same visibility from the fence line. But every single trip to the bathroom, morning after coffee, midday after lunch, evening before bed, I detoured outside with purpose. Unscrewed the cap, aimed carefully, and added my contribution. Not all at once in a flood, gradually, over the days, letting it mix in slowly. The first time felt ridiculous, standing there in my backyard under the stars, but anger fueled me through the awkwardness. A cup here, a pint there. The gasoline's pungent, eye-watering aroma masked the urine's sharper tang. Unless someone stuck their nose right in and sniffed deliberately, it blended seamlessly. And who does that with a gas can? By Friday evening, the can was full again, 5 gallons of what I dubbed my nightmare cocktail. I stirred it gently with a long stick to ensure even distribution, wiped the exterior spotless with a rag to remove any telltale residue, and recapped it tightly. The trap was set, humming with potential. Now came the performance, the bait to lure him in deep. I needed Jerry relaxed, confident, and greedy. Sunday afternoon rolled around, and I checked to make sure he was outside, washing his truck in the driveway, hose spraying arcs of water, radio blaring some 80s rock anthem. Perfect audience. I made a show of it, popped the hood of my Honda Civic in the driveway, checked the oil and fluids ostentatiously with rags and a dipstick, then loaded bags into the trunk, a duffel stuffed with old clothes, a suitcase from the closet, even a cooler for effect. I paced back and forth, phone pressed to my ear, talking loudly to an imaginary colleague. "Yeah, Mike, the client's insisting on this trip. Heading out of town for work, Could be a week, maybe 2. House'll be empty, so I'll lock it up tight. No worries, man. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Jerry glance over once or twice, his movements slowing as he scrubbed the truck's fender. The wheels were turning in his head, I could practically hear them grinding. Satisfied, I hopped in the car and drove off, heart thumping with anticipation. But I didn't go far. Just circled the block a few times, then parked on a quiet side street behind a row of thick bushes that obscured my view but allowed me to peer through with the binoculars I kept in the glove box. Don't judge, I used them for occasional birdwatching at the nearby parks. From there, I had a clear line of sight to Jerry's house and mine. An hour ticked by slowly, the sun dipping lower, casting long shadows across the lawns. Then movement. Jerry emerged from his garage, wiping his hands on a rag, glancing casually up and down the street. Satisfied no one was watching, he headed straight for my gate, slipping through with the ease of familiarity. He grabbed the gas can, hefted it with a grunt, full weight now, and lugged it back to his yard. No small jug this time, he poured liberally, first filling his mower's tank to the brim, then topping off his truck's gas tank right there in the driveway. Greedy bastard took every last drop, leaving the can bone dry before returning it to my patio. I waited another half hour for good measure, then staged my return. Pulled into the driveway with the hood popped, cursing mildly under my breath for effect, damn alternator acting up again. And unloaded the bags as if my trip had been aborted by mechanical woes. Jerry was already out front, yanking on his mower's pull cord like his life depended on it. Pull after pull, the engine sputtered and coughed but refused to catch. His face turned beet red, veins popping on his forehead like twisted ropes. "Goddamn piece of shit," he bellowed, loud enough for the whole block to hear, kicking the wheel in frustration. Sweat poured down his shirt as he tried again and again, plumes of acrid smoke puffing from the exhaust. I unloaded my bags slowly, pretending not to notice the spectacle, but inside I was electric with schadenfreude, a grin threatening to split my face. Eventually, he gave up on the mower, storming over to his truck with a string of curses that would make a sailor blush. Key in the ignition, vroom, a brief roar, then sputter, cough, stall. He revved it desperately, pumping the gas pedal, but it died dramatically 2 blocks down at the intersection with Maple Street. Horns blared from irritated drivers as traffic swerved around him. Jerry pounded the steering wheel, his face a mask of pure rage, before popping the hood and staring helplessly at the engine. From my living room window, curtains parted just a sliver, I watched the whole thing unfold like a front row seat to a tragicomedy. When he finally pushed the truck back home, grunting and swearing the entire way, I laughed so hard I had to sit down on the floor, sides aching, tears streaming. But that was merely the opening act. Over the next few weeks, Jerry's life unraveled like a cheap sweater caught on a nail. The mower. He hauled it to a local repair shop, only for the mechanic to declare the engine utterly ruined, internals corroded beyond salvage, like it had been fed straight acid. Junked it for parts, shelling out for a new one that sat unused in his garage. The truck fared even worse, repeated breakdowns, stalling at stoplights, billowing smoke on highways. Tow trucks became a familiar sight on Elmwood Drive, their flashing lights drawing curious neighbors to their windows. Repair bills stacked up, and I overheard heated arguments from his open windows. His girlfriend, Lisa, a sharp-tongued woman in her 30s who'd moved in a year ago, screaming about money and broken promises. "You're a loser, Jerry. Always screwing things up." Doors slammed, tires screeched as she peeled out one night, bags packed in her sedan. She didn't come back. The neighborhood buzz picked up steam, whispers turning into open conversations at the rare block gatherings. Mrs. Hargrove hosted an impromptu barbecue one weekend, her famous apple pies as the draw, and the stories flowed like cheap wine. Raj Patel cornered me by the grill, flipping burgers. "You hear about Jerry? Borrowed my ladder last month for one day, never saw it again. Had to buy a new one." Another neighbor, Tom from down the street, chimed in. Owed me $50 for helping with his roof, ghosted me completely. It painted a picture. Jerry was a con man in mechanic's overalls, charming enough to weasel his way into people's trust, toxic enough to burn every bridge he crossed. Stolen tools, unpaid debts, shady side jobs that left clients high and dry. Emboldened, I did some digging of my own late at night, fueled by black coffee and the glow of my computer screen. Public records online were a goldmine. County databases, court filings. Turns out Jerry had a rap sheet, a DUI from 2008 he'd skipped court on, multiple petty theft charges from 2012 involving shoplifted auto parts, even a bench warrant for failing to pay fines. Nothing violent, but enough to make him a flight risk if cornered. My revenge had evolved into something resembling civic duty. I found the Somerset County Sheriff's Ride-Along program online. A community engagement initiative where civilians could tag along on patrols to learn about law enforcement. Filled out the application form, in Jerry's name. Used his publicly available details, address from the voter rolls, date of birth from a quick people search site, even his email that I'd overheard him shout once during a phone call. Added an enthusiastic note, eager to learn about the job, available anytime. It took a few weeks, but the payoff was exquisite. One crisp morning, as I sipped coffee on my porch, 2 squad cars rolled up to Jerry's house, lights flashing but sirens silent. Deputies knocked firmly. Jerry answered the door in a stained t-shirt, hair disheveled, looking like he'd just rolled out of bed. Words were exchanged, inaudible from my vantage, but the outcome was clear. Cuffs clicked into place, Jerry protesting loudly, "What the hell is this? This is bullshit. You've got the wrong guy." He was led away, still shouting as they bundled him into the back seat. The official story, gleaned from neighborhood gossip and a quick call to the sheriff's office, posing as a concerned resident, was a routine warrant check triggered during verification for his ride-along application. Irony at its finest. Jerry's house sat empty for months after that, a "for sale" sign sprouting in the overgrown yard like a weed. It sold eventually to the Millers, a nice young family with 2 kids and a golden retriever that barked happily at passers-by. Elmwood Drive exhaled collectively, returning to its quiet rhythms. My gas can stayed full, untouched. The backyard gate got a shiny new lock. And as I mowed my lawn one Saturday, the mower purring smoothly, I reflected on it all. Was it overkill? Maybe. Petty? Absolutely. But in a world where small thefts chip away at the foundations of trust, sometimes you have to fight fire with, well, a pungent alternative. Justice, after all, comes in many flavors.